the flooding issues that we have. And in Provencher, a lot of it is overland flooding. I would also say that we do need a lot of road improvements around. As I've driven around, being my first time campaigning, I put up a lot of my own signs, and you get to see what these roads are like, and it's not pretty, folks. And when you get up into the north part of our riding, in Pine Falls, Powerview, whatever, these folks are lost. They are just saying that they're a forgotten crowd out there. Their forestry industry has been decimated. They're losing their jobs. The families are having to leave. Their businesses are closing. What they need are the tools. Broadband to get businesses going in there, highways to get the products in and out, and the people back and forth.
The infrastructure needed to support local agriculture is rapidly disappearing. So I believe the priority would be to establish, reinforce the infrastructure for a local food economy. What's happening is increasingly large corporations, corporate agribusiness, and centralized operations are shutting down small community slaughterhouses, grain elevators, and canneries. The lack of local control over means of production is forcing more and more farmers to abandon agriculture. Greens support family farmers as environmental stewards and as efficient producers of nutritious food. The family farm is the primary unit of production. Agricultural policies and infrastructure must be designed to keep family farms economically viable. We support the active participation of Canadian farmers in export markets where this is consistent with achieving their most important role, providing domestic markets with healthy food and sustaining Canada's agricultural resource base. We support education of Canadian consumers regarding the value of wholesome, locally grown food, and we need the infrastructure to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly endorse the remarks in respect to dealing with the flooding threat in this riding. When I was Minister of Natural Resources, I had the privilege of negotiating with the then Liberal federal government arrangements to ensure spending millions of dollars on dikes in the Red River Basin. And it was not easy going, but we did get the money finally. Subsequently, we've learned that those dikes had to be much higher, and we're doing that now, I think, finally. But there's much to be done, and that would be my first priority, to ensure that every community, every effort be taken to ensure that there is adequate flood protection in the Provencher area. Another interesting thing that I would like to consider is the greater use of rail transportation. It's very efficient. We can have the trucks putting their trailers on the rail and dispatching it, and in a matter of 24 hours it goes from here to Toronto or Montreal. We have to consider that for this riding. I think Steinbach, and particularly Steinbach in this area, has been cheated by the National Railway System for far too long. I think that one other area that I would like to see considered is in the case of establishing good health. We're living in a society where there are more and more seniors, and we want our seniors to stay healthy. My wife and I are privileged to be able to belong to a fitness center, and you should see the scores of seniors who are walking, jogging, doing their best to stay fit. We need many, many more of these fitness centers in Canada, and we need more of them in Provencher.
I'll just pick up on that because just so happens that my mother is elderly, and she suffered a stroke not too long ago, and she is now currently in a nursing home in Vida. The care there is great. The food is great. If you can imagine a combination of Mennonite and Ukrainian food, on the menu there in Vita is absolutely great, and the care that she's receiving is first class. However, the inconvenience is that my father's 92 years of age, living here in Steinbach and Fernwood, and the reality is that, as I mentioned before, as part of the sandwich generation, my wife and I are in a position where we have to transport my father to see my mother at least twice a week. We don't mind doing it, but the reality is it would be so much better if there was adequate seniors' homes right here in Steinbach and in heavily populated areas. Many of our residents, elderly, have had to go to St. Adolphe. Again, no problem with people in St. Adolphe being hospitable and so on, but the reality is it's an inconvenience. And so we would like to see greater measures taken to establish facilities that could handle seniors in our communities. And I know that it's not purely or not only a federal concern, it's a provincial matter as well. But we need to have equalization payments from the federal government to the provincial government that will see this happen as part of an infrastructure program. Again, like has been mentioned, we need to have flood damage control at a greater level. Obviously, we're seeing that this is a repeated activity every spring. It happens that there's flooding in Manitoba and along the Red River in Provencher in particular, and throughout the rest of our riding, there is overland flooding concerns that have to be addressed as well. So there are great concerns there, but the bottom line is this. The federal government are not the experts in what needs to happen at the local level. The municipal government and communities have to be the ones to determine what their priorities are. They pass on that information to the provincial government, and the provincial government, together with the federal government, then with their payments, with their grants and with their funding, look after the needs. But individual municipalities and communities have to establish what their priorities are and then convey them to their elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. It's indeed, I agree with a lot of what Dave just said there. The hundreds of millions of dollars that the federal government spent on your behalf went to the floodway in a joint sharing with the province in order to protect that city. We, in fact, in terms of other types of infrastructure, the Building Canada Fund has been a tremendous success. And in terms of the kinds of projects that I felt were a priority for the people of Provencher, our sewer and water, our issues like that. We've also invested heavily in assisted living facilities, again in cooperation with the province. We've built or announced, together with the province, facilities in Grunthal, in Steinbach area, where we just made an announcement recently before the election, St. Anne, and other areas. So while the province carries the constitutional responsibility, we have a responsibility in terms of assisting them with the funding. And in respect of that, our transfers to Canada, through the Canada plans to the provinces, has steadily increased under our government despite the recession. This year, Manitoba would be receiving $3.4 billion under our equalization payments. That goes to Canada Health and the social transfers. The health transfers are increased at approximately 6% a year. The other transfers, the social transfers, at 3%. I remember being in a provincial government in the mid-90s and how the books were balanced on the backs of the province. $25 billion was taken away from the province, and the provinces then had to balance their books with incredible difficulty when the then federal government took away that money. We have consistently refused to approach balancing the books by taking it away from essential social services.
All right, that'll do it for the questions. So each of the candidates now is going to get to have closing remarks. I would ask you to keep your remarks in the area of about 3 minutes. If you're in doubt of where your time is at, Kyla at the back will be more than happy to remind you. Janine, you did not get a chance to answer a question first, so you can start with the closing remarks.
For centuries, family farms were the foundation of our society and economy. Over the last 5 decades, federal policies, subsidies, and changing technologies have shifted food production from small, ecologically sustainable family farms to giant agribusiness. This shift has given multinational corporations control over our food supply. Meanwhile, farmers increasingly rely on off-farm income to survive. Our food security and safety are threatened directly by agribusiness, as factory farms crowd chickens, turkeys, cows, and pigs into inhumane and unhygienic conditions, creating the risk of serious health threats from toxic spinach to mad cow disease and swine flu. Animals are pumped full of antibiotics and hormones, while many crops are now genetically modified and treated with pesticides, developing increasing resistance and increasing our weed problems. Meanwhile, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has a credibility problem. CFIA has an inherent conflict of interest, mandated to regulate for food safety while at the same time mandated to promote Canadian food products in Canada and abroad. This, plus a lack of preparedness, accounts for the delay on blowing the whistle on the listeriosis outbreak due to Maple Leaf Luncheon Meats in 2008, in which 22 people died. The report on the outbreak from independent investigator Sheila Wetherill, former head of Edmonton's health system, noted that increasingly large factory food preparation increased risks to health and safety. However, the recommendations focused only on more inspections and more chemical cleaning, instead of reforming the food system to encourage smaller, more traceable operations, such as the organic model. Just when Canadians were reeling from the listeriosis outbreak, a memo from inside CFIA was leaked indicating the Harper government's plans to cut the number of inspectors. The inspector who found the Treasury Board memo outlining the planned cuts, sent it to his union, was fired. The health of Canada's population today and in the future depends on the environmentally sustainable production of wholesome food. We believe that local organic agriculture must play a role in mitigating and reversing climate change, providing food security, restoring social health, improving human health, protecting water, and providing sustainable livelihoods for citizens. We must restructure our agricultural markets to sustain farming and provide farm families with a fair share of the consumer food dollar. We want to expand local small-scale agriculture and support a rapid transition to organic agriculture, rather than subsidizing costly agrochemicals, industrial food production, and genetically modified crops. Please think green, vote Janine, send Ottawa a clear message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janine. I think we have to remind ourselves again, why are we here? This election was caused because of a problem in Ottawa. We have a government, the Harper government, that cannot work with the other parties, that refuse to work with the other parties. We have a government that refused to tell elected MPs how much their programmings were cost. The F-35 has gone from, I read something recently said $16 billion. We now talk $30 billion, because this is what the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said he can try and find out. He was kept away from the figures as well. This $30 billion won't buy a plane with an engine, though, or a propulsion system, or a weapon system. So I don't know what it's eventually going to all cost. Anyway, that refusal demonstrated profound disdain for the Harper government towards our democracy. When you start talking democracy, we've got a wheat board in this country that was established for producers, and it is producer-controlled and run through the board of directors. And we've got a government who has said they will get rid of it no matter what. They will change the voting rules to get rid of it. They will put gag orders on board members not to talk about it. They will do all sorts of things to get rid of that because the Harper government doesn't like it. What's next? Supply management? Supply management was put in by a Liberal government back, the dairy in 1967, and the poultry products came in under 1972. The Liberal government's put those programs in place, and you've got the strongest, most stable agriculture industries based on that type of programming. And we will defend those programs in the international courts of opinion or whatever, in the World Trade Court. Healthcare. Let me just touch base on healthcare, because I know I'm going to run out of time here. I should invite you all